Welcome back to the daily series, Lesson 5, where things finally start to feel alive. In Lesson 4, we learned how a component renders. Today, we learn how it reacts. Here's the mental model to hold on to. A component is just a function that runs once per render, and every re-render is a fresh function call, where all your variables reset. useState is how React remembers a value between those calls, and useEffect is how your component reaches out to the world beyond the render. So here's the map for today. 4 mental models built around those 2 hooks. First, useState itself, the one-line state machine every component leans on. Second, the functional update form, passing a function to your setter so you read the latest value, not a stale one. Third, immutability. New arrays, new objects never mutate in place because React compares by reference. And fourth, useEffect, your component's bridge to the outside world, running after render with a dependency array that controls when. Let's start with the first model. useState is, at heart, a generic function. You give it an initial value, and it hands back a tuple, the current value, and a setter. TypeScript infers the type from what you pass in, so useState of 0 gives you a number. useState of a string gives you a string. For unions or empty arrays, you annotate explicitly, user or null, product array, and so on. And here's the senior reflex. The setter is the only way to update. Writing count equals count plus 1 does absolutely nothing. Call the setter, get a re-render, that's the whole machine. Now, calling that setter has 2 senior reflexes attached to it. First, if the new value depends on the current one, use the function form. Set count of C plus 1. Why? Because the bare count in your handler is captured from this render. It's stale. Call set count 3 times with count plus 1, and you get plus 1, not plus 3. Switch to the functional form, and React feeds you the latest value each time. Second reflex, never mutate. Items. Push doesn't trigger a re-render. React compares references. Always return a new array or object. Spread to append, filter to remove, map with a spread to update. So state lets a component remember. useEffect lets it reach outside itself. Anything that isn't pure rendering, a fetch, a subscription, a timer, setting document title, focusing an input, belongs in an effect because it runs after. React commits to the DOM. The dependency array is the control knob. Empty means once on mount, count in there means rerun when count changes, and leaving it off means every render, which is almost never what you want. And that third pattern is the senior reflex. If your effect starts something, return a function that stops it. Clean up runs before the next effect and on unmount, skip it, and you've got leaking intervals and zombie subscriptions in production. And here's that reflex applied to the most common case, fetching data on mount. 3 pieces of state, data, loading, error, 1 effect, 1 cleanup. The canceled flag is the detail beginners miss. If the component unmounts before the fetch resolves, you don't want to call setState on a dead component, so cleanup flips the flag and the dot then bails out. Learn this shape by hand, because in Lesson 8, tan-stack query collapses the whole thing into one line, and you'll appreciate why it exists. Now, a question that trips up almost every beginner. Should related state be 3 separate use states, or 1 object? Both are fine. The senior reflex, 2 or 3 unrelated values, keep them separate. It's simpler to read and update. But once you're grouping related fields, like filters or form data, collapse them into 1 object and use the spread pattern to update a single field while preserving the rest. And for actual forms, Lesson 6 brings in a library that replaces both styles entirely. Here are 6 reflexes that quietly separate beginner state from production state. First 3, derive values like full name on render instead of storing them, use the functional setter whenever the next state depends on the previous one, and always spread objects to make a new reference. Mutation is invisible to React. Bottom row. Be honest in your dependency arrays. Cancel async work on unmount with a flag or AbortController, and pass a function to useState when the initial value is expensive. Internalize these 6, and most state bugs simply stop happening. And here's your daily reference. 12 patterns on one page. Down the left column, you've got the shapes of state itself: primitive, value setter, object update, and cleanup. The middle column is where state meets the outside world: explicit types, functional updates, mount effects, and fetch cancellation. And the right column is the power tools: lazy init, array append, dependency-driven effects, and useRef for mutable values that shouldn't trigger a re-render. Screenshot this one. It's the muscle memory of every React component you'll write. Now the flip side: 5 mistakes that all look fine in code review but quietly break things. Mutating state directly so React never sees a new reference. Missing dependencies that freeze your effect on stale values. Setting state in an effect without deps and spinning into an infinite loop. Capturing a variable in a closure that never updates. And storing derived values in state when you could just compute them on render. Every one of these is silent. No error, no warning, just a bug your users find before you do. So let's put it to work. 3 exercises, all building on the product card and product list from lesson 4. First, a cart drawer with useState. Add item, remove item, update QTI, all with spread and map and filter, never mutating. Second, sync document, title to your cart count with useEffect, the classic side effect with the dependency array as your contract. Third, fetch products manually with useState and useEffect plus a canceled guard, the painful version. So when lesson 8 hands you use query in one line, you'll know exactly what it's saving you from. And that's lesson 5. You've got useState, functional updates, immutability, and useEffect with cleanup. The 4 reflexes that turn a rerunning function into something that remembers and reaches out safely. Tomorrow we go up a level. Forms invalidation with React Hook Form and Zod, with schemas that mirror your pedantic models on the back end. Same shape, both ends. See you in lesson 6.